Hello, welcome to the channel. I'm John Peters. This video is going to be a concise explanation of the details about how to practice mindful breathing. I made another video where I went more deeply into the explanation of why mindful breathing works the way it does, and I'll post a link up at the top here if you want to go watch that. You actually don't need to watch that in order to learn from this video about how to practice. But a lot of people find that interesting. Either go watch that first or maybe come back and watch that later. But in this video, I'm just going to explain here's how to practice. And I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions that people have about when to practice and different details about practice in general. And I'll also give you some recommendations about how to be successful about initiating the practice and following through to the point where you start realizing the types of results that you want. Okay, so as I have mentioned in other videos, I have been practicing meditation for many decades. I've been incorporating it into my therapy practice for 25 years. And I also have taught it to thousands of students through a stress management course at a local university. So the method that I'm going to share here is one of many. There are many types of practice for mindfulness, and there are many, many types of meditation practices. And a lot of those are good for general wellness and stress relief. But the one I'm sharing here is the one that I have found easiest to learn, most reliable, and the one that gives the most robust benefits for a relatively small amount of practice, right? And as I've said in other videos, for me that's important because I want to share something that's feasible, something that people can actually learn quickly, put into practice quickly, and get the results from it really quickly. Okay, so that's why I'm choosing this technique and why it's the one that I teach people 99% of the time, right? So let me first talk about the setup and some different features of how to do it. And then I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions about it and also talk about how to successfully implement the practice if you would like to experiment with it, right? So the setup is really easy. Sometimes when people think about meditation, they think that they need a special robe and a mala, a bead necklace, and a special cushion and an altar and maybe a big Buddha statue and an incense burner and things like that. I'm going to talk in another video about how you can use ritual to support your practice. But the short answer is you don't have to do any of that. In fact, um, setting doesn't matter so much because you really should be able to be mindful in most moments of your life. And this includes um, standing in line at the grocery store, standing in line at the bank, sitting at a long stoplight in your car, right? So basically, setting ultimately doesn't matter, although it can be supportive, and I'll come back and talk about that in another video. But you can practice mindfulness in any posture, standing, sitting, lying down, and you can do it without someone on the outside necessarily noticing that you're doing something special, right? So I could do it sitting in this chair. I could stand up and stand and do it. I'll do another video about walking meditation and qigong and moving meditations, but in this video I'm talking about static meditation where your body is relatively still. Okay, so posture doesn't really matter too much as long as you're relatively comfortable. All right. And it also doesn't matter what you do with your eyes. Sometimes people say, "Well, I can't meditate while I'm standing in line at the grocery store because I don't want to stand there with my eyes closed and look silly." Well, the thing about meditation and your eye position is that there are three choices with your eyes when you're doing any form of meditation, and that is open, closed, or just barely open, right? If you go to formal meditation training, most of the time your meditation teacher is going to teach you that third type, which is not fully closed and not fully open. And the reason for that is that for some people, if your eyes are fully closed, some people either go to sleep or they create distracting internal imagery that gets in the way of the mindfulness, right? Also, if your eyes are open, that means that your visual field is fully available to you, and you might end up paying attention to what's going on in your visual field. Although in a lot of meditation temples and zendos and places like that, when you do the meditation, you actually turn and you face the wall, so you're not really seeing anything visually particularly intricate and interesting. But that's why formal meditation tends to say mostly closed, so you get rid of the problems of the first, of having them fully closed, and you also get rid of the problems of having your eyes fully open, but you're kind of in between, right? But for the purposes of what I'm teaching you, we're going to just go with the default, my eyes are open. Although if you're doing it in a setting where you prefer one of the other two positions of fully closed or almost fully closed and like looking kind of down at an angle, that's fine. So eye position doesn't really matter, but because like for me, I actually do practice in places like standing in line at the grocery store. I'm going to just not do anything special with my eyes, right? Now, people also ask, do I need to do something special with my hands? Do I need to have my hands in the prayer position? Do I need to have my hands like on my lap in some sort of special meditative pose, right? The short answer is no. Again, if you're doing your meditation sessions at home, where you're not worried about someone thinking that you look silly, you can practice with hand positions to see how it affects the tenor, the tone of your practice. I do think that, hand positions can matter, right? Like if I meditate for 5 minutes with my hands like this, it might affect my mind differently than if I meditate for 5 minutes with my hands like this, right? Hand position does kind of matter. But again, for the purposes of the type of practice that I'm generally recommending, we're not going to do anything special with your hands unless, of course, as I said, if you're in a setting and you want to experiment with having your hands on your thighs or in a position where you think, is this the best one for me? Feel free to experiment with that, right? So the other thing is that people sometimes ask, do I breathe through my nose or do I breathe through my mouth when I do it? And again, the short answer is doesn't really matter. The type of meditation that I'm teaching you here and that I'm recommending that you practice is one that, and I'll talk about this a little more later, that you're going to do in short periods, like 30 seconds to a minute per session. So really short periods. And what you do with your mouth and your nose doesn't really matter. Obviously, if you're super congested and you can't breathe through your nose, you're going to be breathing through your mouth. If you go to formal meditation, the answer to that question about the mouth and the nose breathing is typically going to be to close your mouth and breathe through your nose. The reason for that is that your nose hydrates air when it goes in and out in a way that keeps your airway more hydrated. So in a formal meditation training, you might be asked to sit for like 40-minute sessions. And for longer sessions, especially if you go to a retreat and you might do 10 40-minute sessions in a single day, if you're doing mouth breathing, your mouth dries out and dries out your airway. So you're going to be sitting there going, and struggling with the fact that your airway is getting dried out by that much mouth breathing. So again, nose mouth doesn't really matter here, but you can kind of choose what you're going to do. So setting doesn't really matter. Eye position doesn't really matter. Hand position doesn't really matter. Nose mouth breathing doesn't matter. You just choose what is going to feel most natural for you in the moment, right? So so here's the actual process of the practice. Number one, be physically comfortable. You don't have to go sit in a hammock on a beach somewhere, but just don't be in too strained a position. Number two, you are going to relax one notch. And it doesn't mean that we have to be a floppy noodle, but you know the difference between tension and relaxation inside your body. And what we're going to do is we're going to just relax just one notch so that we're orienting our mind toward allowing our inner relaxation to emerge during our practice session. Because relaxation is key to stilling the mind. And it's also part of the goal for the direct effects of just feeling more calm through the direct effects of the calming practice. And so if we allow ourselves to just let the relaxation happen, then we're going to get more of that, right? So be comfortable, relax one notch, right? Again, not to be a floppy noodle, but just one notch. Number 3, we're going to pay attention to the breath. And what that means is we're going to let the breath be natural. So in this form of mindfulness meditation, we're not going to do something special with the breath, right? We're not going to make it long. We're not going to make it deep, right? We're just going to tune in, pay attention to the breath, let it be natural. This may feel awkward because most of the time we are not actually consciously paying attention to our breath, right? Now, if you have a really bad cold or you have asthma or something like that, you may have times where you pay more attention to the breath than the average person. But in general, we relegate consciousness of the breath to our subconscious, and we're not keeping it in our conscious mind. And so during a mindfulness practice session, we're actually going to place the mental attention on the chest and the belly, and we're going to pay attention to the breath in real time, and we're going to be a passive observer of the breath. So we're not going to direct it, we're just going to let it be, right? Now, a common thing that people will sometimes say is, hey, John, I tried to do that, but I really felt like I was still doing the breath. That's all right. Let yourself do that. But as you relax and as you do repeated practices, you will get better at being more in that observing mode. Excuse me. You'll be more in that observing mode, kind of like standing on the beach watching the wave come in and out. You're not doing the wave, you're just watching the wave. You'll get more able to be in that mode of watching the breath than directing it and feeling like you're doing the breath. But when we tune into the breath, it's awkward because there's that tension between doing and watching. Also, in most of our day when we're not paying attention to the breath, our assumption is that the breath is pretty even and unremarkable. But when you pay attention to the breath is actually a rich set of information that your brain is normally not paying attention to. And when you tune in and watch the breath in real time, that can feel a little weird because, oh, wait, I'm noticing that my breaths aren't even from one breath to the next, or, they're not as deep as I thought. Maybe they should be deeper, right? You're going to let go of judgments about the breath. You're going to let go of trying to direct it to be a certain quality of breath. Our goal is just to be aware of the breath. Let the breath be as it is. Your body knows how to breathe. You don't have to direct it. Your body will just breathe. So just let go of that urge to be more in control and try to be the observer of the breath. Now, another thing I'll say is most of the time, I recommend the default of your attention on the breath to be the chest and the belly, because those are easy things to notice while you are breathing. If you're practicing mindfulness and you're doing that in a time where you're feeling a lot of challenging emotions, and part of your goal is to be able to cope with those challenging emotions and not be overwhelmed by them, it is fine to do practice sessions where you actually put your attention on your nose and the sensation of the air going in and out of your nose, as opposed to the chest and the belly when you breathe. And the reason for that is awareness of the nose is more of what we call a peripheral awareness rather than a core awareness, right? So the reason that I make this recommendation is if someone tells me, I'm feeling so sad, I can barely stand it, and I say, point to your body where you're feeling the sadness. Probably nobody's ever going to point to their nose, right? You're just not going to do that. You're going to point to your chest. You're going to point to your belly, right? And so if you're feeling really, really challenging emotions and you want to use mindfulness as a way to soften the intensity of those challenging emotions, it's fine to use peripheral awareness, like air going in and out of your nose, as opposed to your core. This is also a reason why sometimes people find the mindfulness practice more emotionally soothing if you do something that does have a hand position where the palms of your hands are either against each other or on the arm of your chair where there's potential input with the many, many nerve endings that are in your fingers and your palms. Because again, that diverts your brain's central focus partially to a peripheral awareness as opposed to a core awareness, right? But the default is going to be pay attention to the chest, pay attention to the belly, right? So we're comfortable in our posture. We are relaxing one notch. We are placing our attention on the breath and letting it be natural. And the last component, and this is an important one to get the types of effects that I recommend and also for it to work quickly. The fourth component is every time you breathe in, silently to yourself, not out loud, but inside your head, you're going to go in. Every time you breathe out, you're going to go out. So not out loud, but in your head, you draw the word through the whole in phase. You draw the word through the whole out phase. You don't say in, out, in, out. You say in as long as you're breathing in. You say out as long as you're breathing out in your head. You also want to resist the urge to change the pacing of your breathing to match how you're saying in and out in your head. So you're not matching your breathing to saying in and out at a certain cadence. You're saying in whenever you're breathing in, you're saying out when you're breathing out. Again, imagine standing on a beach and saying in as the wave comes in and out as the wave goes out. The words match the action. You don't change the action to match the words. So that's the whole practice. You're just comfortable, you're mindfully aware of the breath, and you're saying in when you breathe in and out when you breathe out in your head. And one thing that is important to know is that when you do this practice and you settle in, you will start to feel some of that calming effect. But you also, and it's kind of paradoxical, you will also have moments where you feel tension arising. I call it awkwardness or impatience. And so tension naturally will arise, and that is not failure. That is evidence that you're doing it correctly and that you're actually paying attention in the correct way, right? Because our brains are sensation-seeking organs. I talked about that in the more rich explanation video that you're welcome to watch later. But basically, your brain is not going to become some sort of clear field of cosmic awareness with like nothing going on in it. That is not the goal of the type of meditation that I am recommending to you. And if you think that is supposed to happen, you're going to think that you're failing at it, because when you practice mindfulness, your brain is not going to shut off, right? It's not going to become perfectly still. Maybe there are meditation masters out there who have practiced for so many years and so many thousands of hours that they're starting to get to that one-pointed stillness. But I'm skeptical that even very, very seasoned practitioners have that many moments of that level of stillness, right? Meditation is in some ways about pointing yourself toward that type of mental evolution. But my instruction is really not oriented toward your enlightenment or my enlightenment. This is about changing your brain so that you are less anxious, less stressed, cope with stress better, have more positive mood, and get a wide variety of other benefits that are easily attainable and quickly attainable through practice. And we'll set enlightenment aside and worry about that later. So what we can do is practice this here together so that during this video, you actually can start to accumulate some of your practice. And let's do one practice session together. And then I will talk a little bit more about how I recommend that you implement it into your life and some recommendations about how to be successful at that, right? So I've got my meditation gong here, but I don't have it mic'd, and I did record it. So I've got it on my machine here that should work. And I'm going to hit that gong virtually through my recording. And so after I hit the gong, what I want you to do is just relax, tune into awareness of the breath and let it be natural. And in your head, as you breathe in, every time you breathe in, say in, and every time you breathe out, say out. If you feel tension arise, just let go of it. And with the next in-breath, go back to the practice and say in. So we're just going to do this for about a minute, okay? So people sometimes ask, do I need a meditation gong like that to do my practice? And again, if you're doing it in your home setting and you like that and it's very supportive for you to come into the mindfulness state, it's great. Um, I like that gong. I've had other gongs in the past. That one has a really beautiful sound and a long sustain. And so if you're doing a mindful practice at home and you're setting up a ritual of I'm going to start it with a gong and end with a gong, a lot of people find that supportive. The other thing is that I'll put a link down in the description of this video for an app called Insight Timer, and it's available on the Apple App Store and also the Google App Store. Insight Timer is a free app that has a really good meditation timer. So it's got some nice little gong sounds like that, and you can set it up and you can save it as a preset if you want after you program it. But you set the timer up and you say, I'm going to do like a minute or whatever. And I want this little sound at the beginning, a sound at the end. You can have silence during the meditation or background noise like ambient music and things like that. Really nice meditation timer. That app also, by the way, has something like 100,000 guided meditations and wellness audio tracks, which are great. You might want to browse those. I'm going to make another video soon about my thoughts about using guided meditations as part of wellness practice. But yeah, that app has a ton of really good free content. The other benefit of using that app is that it keeps track of how much practice you've done and gives you a report. I think like once a week, it'll say, you've done so many minutes of practice. And a lot of people find that supportive of their ongoing practice, right? So you might have noticed when we were doing that little short session together that you felt somewhat calm, but you probably noticed some of that awkwardness that our brains notice during the practice. And that is normal, right? That's not going to go away. I have been meditating for 35 years and have done quite a bit. And when I do it, that's what I notice as well. And that's because, like you, I'm a human. I've got a human brain. Our human brains are sensation-seeking organs. And when we turn down some of the normal noise that's going on in our attention, our brains are like scrambling to kind of create a coherent, interesting gestalt of information, and that is going to feel a little awkward. So that's not failure. That's normal. And in fact, as I explained in the other video, if you feel that tension arise at times and then you let it melt and you go back to saying in with the next in breath, to me, that is the mechanism that provides the best benefits of meditation. And that's just because it exercises the brain's ability to not bite and get hooked on a stress trigger, because it's not a true stress trigger. It's a false hit on positive danger, right? It's not a true hit. So that's basically how to practice, right? And so what I recommend that you do, based on many, many years of working with thousands of people and teaching these types of practices, what I recommend is that you do 4 to 5 minutes of practice a day. But for the first 2 to 4 weeks, I want you to only do 30 seconds to 1 minute at a time. So each practice session is not going to be more than about a minute. It's not tragic if you go over, right? A minute and a half won't kill you. But I recommend short sessions at first so that you start to get it built into your regular lifestyle, and also so that you have a sense that you're doing it correctly. Now, after you've done it for 2 to 4 weeks and you have a decent sense that you're doing it correctly and you're starting to realize some of the secondary benefits that I've mentioned of, dealing with stress better, then you can experiment with changing the length of the individual practice session as feels comfortable. So some people start to do 2 minutes at a time, or they'll do 3-minute sessions, 5-minute sessions. And what we want to do ultimately is calibrate to ourselves and basically tune into how much do I really need to be doing on average every day in order to enjoy the stress relieving benefits of the practice. For some people, that's 3 to 4 minutes a day. For some people, it's 10 to 15 minutes a day, right? I have one patient who has found over time that he likes to do 2 10-minute sessions a day, and for him, that maintains the type of benefits that he wants to get out of the practice. But when you start, I want you to do 30 seconds to a minute at a time, and I want you to do it enough each day that you're accumulating about 4 to 5 minutes. If you do less than that, it'll be soothing, but it'll take you longer to get those indirect benefits of the brain fitness effect that you get from it, right? So it's not wrong to do 1 or 2 minutes a day. In fact, I think it's infinitely better than none. But if you want the brain fitness effect, that brain conditioning that actually reworks your stress response so that in general, you're just generally dealing with stress a lot better, and then what I want you to do is I want you to, um, you know, then what I want you to do is I want you to try to do 4 to 5 minutes a day. So people sometimes ask, do I need to do it in the morning, evening, what time of the day matters? Time doesn't matter. Again, you can do it while standing in line at the grocery store. Just do it when it fits into your lifestyle. And the another way that I recommend that people initiate the practice and make it easier to kind of follow through with it, and also not have to constantly be worrying about like, oh, have I done it enough? I need to do it. When should I do it? You know, that inner dialogue that we don't really need to be doing, but people sometimes get stuck in the beginning part of practice before you work it into regular lifestyle. Is what I recommend is get some popsicle sticks, and I'll put a link in the description to some popsicle sticks, so it's real easy for you to acquire some if you want. But you get some popsicle sticks, and you say, okay, for the first few days, as I start to practice this, I'm going to try to do 3 of these sessions a day, right? And so what you do is you get a container, like I've got this jelly jar, and you set your popsicle sticks next to the container. And then every time you do a practice, you stick one of your popsicle sticks in your jar. So you don't have to really be thinking, how many have I done today? When do I need to get back to it? I mean, some people will set alarms on their watch and things like that to do it, and that's fine. But this is exporting it to the sticks, so you don't really have to mentally be spending as much energy worrying about it. And then at the end of the day, you know, whenever you get your 3 sticks in there, you're like, okay, oh yeah, I achieved my goal for today, right? And then you just increase your number of sticks over the first week or so until you've got an optimal number of sticks in your pile, so that each day you're achieving your goal of acquiring about 5 minutes of practice, right? So that's a recommendation I have for anything that we do that is going to have repeated iterations each day where we want to reset, or each week. You know, I had a patient recently who had a goal of doing an exercise different from mindfulness, but he wanted to do it X number of times every week, and he was using that kind of technique of having some objects that he put into a container, and then he reset it every week, and he tried to get all of his objects into the container, right? So that may be helpful. You don't have to do it that way, but a lot of people find that useful. So if you have questions that I didn't address in this video, feel free to leave them in the comments section below, and I will keep track of those, and I will certainly make a part 2 follow-up video and answer those questions or answer them in the comments. If you like this type of content, feel free to hit the like button, and if you like the channel, feel free to subscribe. I'm happy that you're watching, and I look forward to hearing comments from you too about the types of effects that people are noticing from practice. As I said, having taught this to thousands of people over the years, what I've noticed is that 95% of people, if you're doing it the way I described in this video, within about a week to 10 days, you will start to notice that even when you're not practicing, you're actually handling stress noticeably better. It's an unambiguous type of improvement on mood regulation, stress regulation, that you get even from 5 minutes a day of practice. It's really that robust with that little bit of input, right? So I wish you good success with that. I hope you do experiment with it to see how it works for you. And again, feel free to leave comments in the comments below.